So officially, it's supposed to be over, coming soon. And I look around and I thought it was over like years ago, but apparently officially it's gonna be over now. And now that it's gonna be officially over, I feel like someone owes us an apology.
Who?
Everybody, they fucked this up. They were wrong. Every expert was wrong about 100% of all of it.
Pretty much.
The government was wrong.
Yep.
The pharmaceutical companies were wrong. The CDC was wrong. Everyone relied on for 3 years of our lives was wrong. But there's no responsibility, no recourse. No one says, "Hey, sorry guys, we kind of pushed it here." Nobody. People gave up their lives. People gave up the way they live. People gave up their businesses. We went through 3 years of just crazy up and down in the financial markets, socially. Friends are no longer friends. And nobody's going to apologize for that.
So I think there's two things I want to kind of unpack here. I think the first thing is I would actually contest that it's over. Now, just because Biden says that it's going to be over May 11th doesn't mean that it's over. We have China opening back up, and apparently they've had millions of people die from either this or the vid or the jab.
So quickly on China, I looked really deep into that. I spoke to people and friends I have in China as well about it because I was curious on how that is. If you take out the comorbidities in China for COVID, it's tiny, the amount of people dying of COVID. They're doing with their numbers the same thing we did here in the beginning.
Just making it up?
Which is if you get into a car accident and you die, but you had COVID, that's a COVID death.
I see.
If you die of a heart attack and you had COVID, that's a COVID death. So they're doing the same model that we did here when we were showing the numbers every single day on every single news channel about all the deaths of COVID. They're doing the same exact.
So they're boosting up the numbers because we know that the government was subsidizing and paying for COVID classification. Right. If you had to pay, we know this because of the documentation that came out, right? That if you came into the hospital with COVID, you got like more money. And then if you gave them drugs for that, you got more money. If they died from it, then you got even more money as a hospital. So there was a huge monetary incentive to push this narrative. Yeah.
Correct. Here it was monetary. There, they shut down the country almost completely for 3-4 years. And if people there found out that it's like a cold, people would be irate.
Well,
so they have to justify the last 3 years of their lives by saying, "Hey, look what happened now because we opened it up."
But wouldn't you say and again, this is just my thinking here. Wouldn't you say China, they were locking? And by the way, I want to make something really clear, actually, Matt. The last 2.5, 3 years was not a COVID issue. It is a lockdown issue.
Correct.
I think that vernacular is really important for me. Whenever I'm talking with someone about the last 3 years, I always say we went into lockdown, and it wasn't. That was the thing that happened. Yes, we had COVID. Yes, we had this disease and all this stuff. But the biggest issue wasn't COVID itself. It was lockdown. That was the biggest issue. It was a control mechanism.
So it was the government control, the social control, these mechanisms that were put in place that were more dangerous than the actual disease itself.
So on that idea, I think, and I could be wrong here, but I think the lockdowns in China were specifically for depopulation. It was specific for crushing small business, crushing medium-sized business, closing down schools. I mean, creating absolute just chaos in so many ways. And so I think it's just part of the depopulation agenda. Now, some people can disagree with me on that, but I mean, let's be honest. If you're a government, and you have to think of every government out there, what's easier to control? More people or less people? Less people, clearly. And if we trace back the history of what governments are exceptionally good at, governments are exceptionally good at killing their people. Period. Full stop.
I think in China's case, there is one guy in charge of everybody. He picked one side very early on and was too proud to adjust to the other side. He didn't want to
that's
die. I really think that's what it is. He was so hard on COVID early on.
He doubled down, tripled down.
He just kept on doubling down, tripling down, and quadrupling down. And the rest of the world was like, wait a second. Like, that's not the way to do it. They're the last to accept that. And I mean, I have friends in Shanghai and Beijing, and they're like, we just go to the bar, and if one guy gets COVID, everyone would scramble, run out, and everyone would turn off their phones and disappear for a week. Because if they were found to have been at that bar with that one COVID case, they may get locked up for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month.
That's right.
And you're like, this is bullshit. You know? I remember in the beginning of COVID, I have like different companies I work with over there. And like, oh yeah, hey, where's this guy? And like, oh, he's got pneumonia. Like, pneumonia? Like, oh, okay, I get what that means. You know?
Yeah.
Because they can't even say it out loud what it is.
Yeah.
You know, because everything that they say is monitored, tracked. I remember when the lockdowns were like getting reinforced, and the people in China were starting to protest it. This was maybe a few months ago.
Yeah. Because they had that one apartment building that like burned down
With people because they're locked.
because they like welded them into their doors. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
I have to. I remember thinking deeply about this, Matt. I'm sorry for cutting you off here, but I remember thinking deeply about this. Like, what would it take for a man? We were talking about earlier, Andrew Tate. What would it take for you as a man with a wife and kids, and you have these guys that you don't know that are officials of the government welding your door shut? Like, I have to imagine that I would have raged against that. But it's so hard to put yourself in that full context and all the situation and all the unknowns and the anxiety and the what's going on. Everybody's dying. All my neighbors are dying. They're welding this door. I guess it's okay for me. It's happening right now. Do I have to make a decision? Do I want to fight them right now? They got the like. What I just have to proposition the idea to you. What would you do if that was happening? I mean, would you rage? Would you rage against it?
I say I would, but in that situation, knowing that if I were to, I'd get locked up.
Oh yeah, for sure.
My family would possibly get locked up.
They'd still weld the door shut.
Yeah. Do you actually make a change? And that's a really tough place to be. And then you go into all historical places of any type of history where people try to speak out against a bad movement and they disappear. And do you want to be that guy that no one remembers, that just goes into re-education camp and never comes out? It's not an easy decision to make. I mean, from the outside, we're like, yeah, fuck them. Of course we would do that.
Of course we'd fight.
Of course I would fight. But then if you're actually in that situation, knowing that you're risking the life of yourself and your family and your future family and your family's family, like, fuck. Do you take on that fight?
I don't know.
And sacrifice?
I mean, in retrospect, obviously, it would have been the better deal because they all burned alive. Or they
Or
died.
you would have burned alive anyway,
You would burn
just for
alive.
speaking out.
Fair enough. It's like the world has seen, I think, through this lockdown, the leadership of the world's hand, and they've shown their cards. They show that the leaders of the world, the architects of our society, have really shown their hand. They've shown us as a populace what they are capable of doing. And I think that is the thing that we need to learn from the most. Not that we haven't learned from this in the past. By the way, Americans have been poisoned by the government in the Tuskegee experiments. We've had false flags like Vietnam. Like, we blew up our own ship to get into that war.
MK Ultra, which is one I've been going down the rabbit hole.
Like, Americans have been the scientific test bed of the government experiments, and government has been killing people for decades, for generations. And so this isn't a new thing. COVID, if we were just to call it out for, at least I'll call it out for what I believe it is, I think it was the greatest scam in our lifetime.
And not to say people didn't get sick. There are people that got sick. There are people that died. Not as many as they said it would be. Not as many as they told us it would be. My 92-year-old grandmother, fine.
You know, she's a hoss.
And she was pissed off that we didn't let her leave the house when she had it. You know?
You should let her live, man.
Yeah.
She's a gangster.
Yeah. And yeah.
So I want to get to this, the comment you made, though. You said there's nobody apologizing. So I saw this thing happen maybe 4 or 5 months ago where I forget what it was called, but it was like not restitution, but it was some other word of, for those who pushed the jab, those who pushed the narrative, we should give them amnesty, right? We should forgive them because they knew not what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And so your comment made me think about that. Should we, the entire world, I don't know who it is, be given an apology? What has to happen to rectify? Because things don't change like the way they changed from lockdown, and then suddenly we roll back the tape and it's not happening anymore. There have been policies enacted. There have been regulations enacted. There's been legislation that has been enacted. There's been overstepping of boundaries from government and police and military that's happened. None of this is going to get rolled back.
Mm-mm.
It's only moving forward. So it's only going to get worse. So what does the world need from the governments in terms of an apology? Do they deserve an apology?
I think we deserve an apology. I think we deserve an apology. In order to move forward, in order to learn, someone needs to be accountable. Where did we go wrong? And these are discussions that we should be allowed to have. Mm-hmm. These are discussions that we should encourage people to have. Where do we fuck up? Mm-hmm. How do we as a people allow this to happen even? Mm. How were they able to use media and fear to make us compliant, to make us just assume that what we were told is correct? And why did we not fight back? Mm. Were we so scared as a people, as a general population? Were we so scared?
I remember
that we were scared to even speak up because when COVID happened, I remember when I first realized COVID was going on, I was in Miami during Super Bowl week. This was January or February of 2020.
Yep.
And me and my wife, we were in Miami. After the trip, we were in the Delta Lounge flying back. And I was getting a cup of coffee. And I happened to sneeze. I went, achoo, and I sneezed. And all the people in the coffee line around me,
they reacted?
They all reacted. Because they saw an Asian guy, because not all Asians in Miami. They saw an Asian guy sneeze.
You're the Chinese guy who brought over the disease. I get it.
And and all of a sudden, I had like this 20-foot radius around me. And I was like, fuck.
It's not a bad way to clear a room.
This is going to be a thing. I felt it initially. I mean, I felt it immediately. I can't believe this is a thing.
You're not wrong.
And then in Korea, because Korea and Asia, they've been through SARS and all this before. They were getting proactively buying masks. They're proactively being a little more cautious, which I get because they've been through this before. And so we saw that happening. We have a lot of family in Korea, and we saw them kind of panicking. So we're like, okay, this is not going to be good because it has to get here. And then the first cruise ship where Americans were on, it was in Japan. And this was early on in COVID, and they locked it down because they said people on that cruise ship had COVID.
I think I remember hearing that, yeah.
A family friend was on that cruise ship. They were older, retired couple, and they were doing a cruise. They died on that cruise ship.
No.
Yeah, because everyone got locked down. Everyone got COVID. They didn't know what to do. They put everyone on respirators. They died on the cruise ship. The only person I know that died of COVID was on that cruise ship that first month.
Really? Now, do you think it was COVID that killed them, or was it the respirators that killed them?
Well, we all know it was respirators, right? We all know that it was the reaction to it and that the initial treatment was not correct. I mean, we know that. That's a fact, right? But at that moment, I knew like, oh man, like this could be a thing. And they told us it's a respiratory disease. They told us that if you don't wear a mask, you can give it to other people and other people will die. We know the truth now, but that's what we were told. And me and my wife, we wanted to do the right thing. I wasn't scared that I was going to die, but they told me that if I were to practice these certain things in life, that I could protect and possibly save the lives of others. Me trying to be a good person in life, I was like, okay, I'm going to do what I'm told. Not because I feel like I'm being compliant. Because even if there's a 5% chance that what they're saying is true, I might as well err on the side of caution and save somebody's life. I don't want to be responsible for killing anybody.
Man, it's such a strong argument, right? It's such a strong argument that you're doing this for you are, let's take the meta of it. You are reducing your freedoms for the greater good of society. The argument is sound. It's just, it's also not sound.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I don't believe them. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the media.
As you shouldn't.
And even with that great level of distrust, for that small percentage chance that they may actually be correct, I was willing to give up my freedom. And in doing so, our business suffered. Social, I saw less friends.
You had more social isolation.
Correct.
Psychological issues. Yeah.
Being home with your wife 24/7 for a year is very stressful and hard. Right? I think there was a lot of divorce during COVID.
Totally.
Because you put two people that are used to having their own lives, at least in some way, shape, or form, stuck together all the time. Yeah. It's stressful.
And they realized they didn't really like each other all that much.
And I gave up and I went through all of that because I believed that at least for a small chance, I may be doing something good for somebody else.
Do you feel like you were duped?
I do. I feel like I was duped. I feel like I gave up these things and it was based all on a lie. And that pisses me off.
It's not insignificant. It's not like this was what was it, 6 weeks to lower the spread or whatever it was. I mean, this ended up being a good solid 2.5 years easy of absolute lockdown, right? And so you had to change fundamental things around your life, behaviors, social interactions. And so you say you felt duped. I mean, how do you reconcile yourself? Just Matt Kim, how do you reconcile that feeling of like, dude, I was told a lie. There was a percentage of that narrative that could be true rationally within good reason. For me to be a good human, for me to be a good citizen, am I willing to take that small percentage of truth within the wrapping of a lie and defer to that because the potential of the greater good is better, even though I am now reducing my own freedoms? I mean, how do you reconcile that, bro?
At least in my own mind, in my heart, I know I was trying to do the right thing. And that's a decision I made. And I accept that. I still feel kind of irked about it.
As you should. You were
I remember
sold the bill of goods.
The moment that I was most pissed off, I think, during the post-COVID era, post-COVID burst, right? Was when there was those pictures and video of Obama's birthday party in Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, only the slaves were wearing masks.
Exactly. And I thought if COVID was real, Obama would know what the real deal is. He gets updates, right? Not only does he get updates, but if there was a treatment out there that could save it, if it was really as bad as they say, he would have first crack at it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He'd get first crack.
But he had his party anyway. And their excuse was, oh, but the laws here are allow this. I said, wait a second. The laws there and laws here are different?
Yeah, rules for thee, not for me.
And I was like, what the hell is going on? How is this guy allowed to have his birthday party of a banger? People are all these climate warriors are flying in on their private jets.
That do more carbon emissions than your car in an entire year.
Celebrities. I'm like, why are there celebrities at Obama's birthday party? Why is it so important to him to have a birthday party in the middle of everyone? You got to stay home. You can't gather for Thanksgiving. You can't gather for Christmas. Yes. You can't do a 4th of July barbecue. You can't do all this stuff. But I'm King Obama, and I'm allowed to have my birthday party. And you guys are not allowed to say anything about it. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
Though pictures like that were, I think, very elucidating. They were very revealing of the gap between the elites and the rest of us plebes, right? It's like rules for thee, not for me, right? These are all rules for you, you slaves, you working class, you proletariat, right? But for the elites, we're immune to this. And they just like you said, Obama would have the best information at his disposal. And if he were to, and I'm taking a crack at him here, I guess, but if he were to truly be a leader who leads by example, that people would want to emulate then he should be following the same bloody protocol that you and I were forced to follow, right?
He could have had a Zoom party. Right? Like everybody else.
Yeah, like everybody else.
Yeah, like a Zoom rave or something.
You want to know one of the most depressing things that happened during lockdown were Zoom weddings. I participated, or no, I didn't. I was going to participate in a relative's Zoom wedding, and I decided not to because I knew that this was going to be a whole bunch of what a waste of my time staring at a screen with these pixelated people walking down an aisle, you know, getting married with nobody in there, and everyone looks like they're all hopped up on. It looks so sterile and unfeeling. And then I remember receiving some clips afterwards, or the replay after it, and it's like, why would I want to watch this? You guys are just standing around like derps. No one's doing anything, and it was so unpersonal. I think if I were to speak just to pull off what you said, what pissed you off the most and kind of help you realize that this was all a farce was this Obama birthday. What pissed me off is when I started seeing pictures of old people with hazmat suits on, masks on, and like a plastic film, and they're trying to hug each other through this plastic. It was so depressing. I was like, this old couple they're on their last leg of life, and they literally cannot touch each other. Like, that angered me so much because for me, it was the cutting off of human connection, you know,
And
that
I
this
wasn't
lockdown thing did.
seeing people in hazmat suits, seeing people in masks. I don't get angry at those people because they're scared. I can't be mad at them for being scared. I'm mad at the people that made them scared, that are shilling the fear, that are promoting the fear, that are making people so scared that they have to live that way. If you're 80 and you're scared that this is it for you, like, death is scary. And if that's the way they can protect themselves, because people do anything to live longer.
Yeah, when the chips are down.
Correct. People will do anything to survive.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad at those people. Like, when I go to the airport now, people, you know, it's very clear. 25% people wear their mask and 75% people don't. And every once in a while, someone will say to me, "Oh, I can't believe those people are still wearing their masks." And I get it. But again, they're scared. There are a lot of people that are scared of a lot of things in life. You don't judge other people for being scared.
Fair enough.
Right?
Masks creates an obvious divergence of worldview, though, right? And so I have to ask you this: do you judge them?
No. I have no problem with other people. I think that I truly believe in freedom of choice. And if they choose to wear a mask on their own, that's their choice. Who am I to judge them for what they choose to do? It's
only when they come to you and be like, "Bro, where's your mask?"
Exactly.
Right? And they start
if they try
forcing
to
you
put it on me, then like, bro, like, do your own shit, right? But if they're doing it, I have no problem with it at all, you know, because it's their choice. And if they feel that much safer, regardless of what information they have, who am I to judge what they do with their lives? You know, they could walk around. I don't judge people for what they wear. I don't judge people for what they drive. I don't judge people for, you know, being scared of spiders. You know, there's a lot of things people are scared of in life. You know, why would I judge them on being scared of COVID? You know, wear your mask. I don't care. It doesn't bother me one bit. But don't tell me I have to wear mine. Because I think just as much as I give people the ability to have their own freedom of choice, I should be allotted the same freedom of choice. I don't want to wear it.
So the government and the leaders owe the world reparations, an apology. Do they need to go to jail because people actually died from these decisions they made? Like, what needs to happen next? Because if nothing happens, which is most likely what's going to happen, is we're going to have a repeat of this exact same thing in the next 3 to 5 years. And you guys don't have to believe me, but Bill Gates, I've watched clips of Bill Gates smirking and saying stuff like, "The next time this happens, the world will pay attention finally," or something like this. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I'm not making this up. Right? He literally smiling and smirking and going, no one took it seriously this time, but we're going to make sure next time people take it seriously. It's like, bro, like, You made like billions of dollars off this. Clearly, you're economically incentivized that this will happen again. So what do you think? Where do we need to go? What needs to happen next?
Well, first is that people need to be allowed to have these conversations.
Fair enough.
That's the basic, is that for years, if you try to have this conversation, it was taken off the internet.
Yeah.
You couldn't even have these conversations.
So we're just being courageous by talking about it.
I mean, who knows? Today, maybe it's allowed. Maybe tomorrow, this will be gone. Maybe the day after, it's allowed again. Maybe two months later, like, oh, just kidding. You can't talk about this anymore. We don't know.
Fair enough.
But open discourse needs to be allowed. You can't stop people from communicating, from talking, for having open discussions about their ideas.
So what would you say to someone who said, hey, lockdown was 2.5 years ago, or I guess it was a year ago now, bro, get over it. What do you say to the people like that?
We have to learn. We have to discuss. And we haven't had these discussions yet. We've all had these discussions in private. We've all sat at home with our friends and our homies and had this talk. Why aren't people talking about it online? Because you can't. And the few people that do, they're labeled as zealots. They're labeled as extremists.
Or conspiracy theorists?
Conspiracy theorists.
It's fascinating how many conspiracies are actually coming true.